The reason we wanted to get you here together today is because there's been lots of developments with LMF, and it's been a rocky road. And I wanted to say, first of all, thank you all very much for allowing us to be in the place we're in today, which I think we're going to resolve this issue, and it's because of all your work. So thank you very much. That's first and foremost. So this is kind of there are several objectives for this gathering, and I'm sorry that we ran out of food. I didn't expect such a good turnout, so thank you for that too. We are going to talk about the state of play. I know some people might have some questions about what actually is happening with what legislation. And so we're here to answer those questions. And also you have some real experts here about LMF who can talk to you about the program. They can talk about the projects that are actually now going to be funded. We hope if things go as planned. So, and we would love this to be more of a dialogue than a lecture. So please ask any question that you want and don't hold them. So with that, I'm going to introduce people who are going to speak about LMF and the status of things as well as the program. Jen Gray from Audubon, Tom Novello from the Nature Conservancy, Wolf Tone from the Trust for Public Land, Eliza Donahue from Natural Resources Council of Maine, and we have Jeff Romano over here from Maine Coast Heritage Trust, and Caitlin Bernard from the Appalachian Mountain Club. So, and we have many champions in the room too, and thank you all. I don't miss anyone, so I won't name you right here. So, with that, Jen, you want to give us an overview of the play legislation?
Yes, thank you. First, though, I want to repeat that we have just the coalition just thanks everyone so much for the wonderful place that we find ourselves in now. It really was the result of a lot of support of the legislators and the leadership of the legislators that helped make this happen. So we really thank you. It was an unexpected early Christmas gift. And we do have a lot of expertise in the room, both from legislators and members of the coalition, but I think some people know more than others, so we're just going to give a very brief background about the program so we're all on the same page. Land Command Future is our state's land conservation program. It was created in 1987, and it was established to secure public's access for recreation, to conserve our most important habitats, to preserve Maine's farming traditions, and to protect the natural infrastructure that's vital to both our sense of place and our economic future. A large focus of the program is actually on working lands and waters, protecting working forest lands, farmlands, and working waterfronts, to protect them from development and to enable them to be available for access for jobs in our natural resources economy. For example, thus far, the program has helped maintain 315,000 acres of working, 315,000 acres of working forest land. So that's keeping that forest land from being developed and converted, and allows jobs that work in that land to continue. It also has a big recreation component to make sure that Mainers and visitors have access to hunt, to fish, to boat, to hike, to snowmobile. There have been hundreds of miles of snowmobile trails protected by this program, and 158 rail trails have been protected.
So Jen, do those forest lands get taken off the tax rolls?
They do not.
No.
Most of those are conservation easements, and so there's an easement on the property that extinguishes the development rights, but ensures sustainable forestry and some of the things that Jen just mentioned. Public access is guaranteed, and then those lands are still paying taxes as they normally would.
They're paying the same taxes. They were in tree growth tax before they were concerned with still a tree growth tax.
Okay. Got it.
Anyone's got questions?
One of the additional things that happened in 2012 with the bond is that there was an increased focus on deer wintering area protections and deer yard habitat protection. So the program historically has changed to reflect the new interests are more important issues. So for example, when it was first created, in 1987, it focused on projects of statewide interest. But over time, the program has been amended and adjusted to focus on programs of regional and local interest. So it's not just the most spectacular property from the state, but really projects that your local community can rely on for access and working waterfront, for example. The program has traditionally been funded by bonds. There have been 6 bonds since its inception, first in 1987, 99, 2005, 7, 12, and 10 and 12. So that's been the historic way that this program has been funded. The process of the Land for Maine's Future program is very thorough and transparent. The projects represent partnerships. All these projects are involved through partnerships with local sporting groups, towns, businesses, land trusts, state agencies, and many, many others. And the projects come from Maine citizens. So they really originate from Maine people wanting to protect the places that, or the resources that they feel are important to their community. And it only works with willing buyers and willing sellers. So there's no one that has to sell their land to the state or to their local land trust if they don't want to. And most typically, state agency is a partner to help make sure that the project is of high quality. There's also a match component, so at least for every dollar that LMF provides to a project, that it has to come up with a matching dollar. Often it comes up with much more leverage than that. And the program is overseen by Land for Maine's Future Board, which includes 3 state agency commissioners, the Commissioner of Marine Resources, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. There's also 6 public members. Those members are nominated by the governor, reviewed by the ACF committee, and approved by the Senate. We expect that this session, the committee will have an opportunity to approve some new members. The board reviews very thoroughly all projects, and it has smaller committees, such as the scoring committee and the appraisal committee, that review all the projects to make sure that they're up to snuff. Recently, Jonathan Levante worked with the Land for Maine's Future program to do a government evaluation act review, and that review didn't come up with any important major flaws. It really affirmed that the program is doing very well. And it's also very popular, I think, as you all know. In October, a poll conducted said 74% of Maine people agreed that the governor should release the voter-approved bonds. 73% of Mainers believe that LMF funds benefit all Mainers and Maine's visitors. So it's very, very popular. All of the bonds have been approved by at least 60% of the voters. So where are we now? Well, you both, the House and Senate, have just acted to recall LD 1454 from the governor's desk. It's our understanding that next week there'll be language amending that bill to replace it with extending the 2010 bond that just expired in November for 5 years. A clean amendment, just extending that bond for 5 years. That's the $6.5 billion bond. All of that money has already been committed to projects. So that moving that bond forward, together with the governor's commitment to releasing the 2012-2010 bonds, will allow 30 projects in your communities to move forward. And thank you again for bringing us to this wonderful place.
Does anyone have questions about that, about 1454, the posture of that? It's clear?
And I'll just mention that Representative Moran was an LMF board member, so he has some insight into how that board functions.
I do, and if anyone has any questions or concerns, and you think that there are gray areas, and you think that all the stones aren't turned over, and all the branches aren't turned upside down, and the money is really looked at thoroughly, you're mistaken about that, because I can guarantee, I sat on there for 4 years, and I was 2 years chair of that. It is a very well organized, very well run. The people are very passionate about what they're doing, or what they're doing. And with the governor's representatives at the table, at that time, it happened to be 4 commissioners when I was there. It's really vetted, so it's when I first got on the board, I wanted to do the little old boys thing. Not a little old boys thing. You get it, you learn it. If you have any questions anytime, please come to me. I'm very passionate about this. Thank you.
Tom, did you want to add?
Well, I can say one thing about the 5-year extension and why 5 years. 5 years matches what's in the Constitution. The Constitution says that when a bond expires, the legislature has 2 years to extend it for 5, so that's why that language is like that. And that also matches what you all did last year when you extended the 2010 Ocean Wind Bond. You remember that expired, appropriations passed the bill unanimously, and then passed both bodies, and was unanimously, it was signed by the governor. So that will be the one thing, if you get questions about why a 5-year time frame, that's what that's about.
Any other questions? Wolf, did you have something you wanted to add?
I might be able to build on the excellent points that Jen mentioned. So often the headlines that come with trust land for Maine's future projects are sort of dollars and acres, and that's sort of a quick, easy line to get out. But I think one of the points I'd like to share here is to kind of dig down a little bit into the benefits that come out of that in terms of, yes, it is about our environment, about the beauty of the state. And what I think the conservation community is really focused on is to look at the additional benefits of health and community and economy. And I think about a project and looking at Caitlin, an LMF investment between what was 2004 and 2007 at the Katahdin Iron Works that built this core piece of conserved land around which Greenville and the communities are now shaping a brand that they can sell and attract people for economy and health and Maine experience. There are LMF investments in Bethel and Oxford County that do the same thing, that penetrate local economies. And you're seeing it up in the high peaks, sort of that Eustis, Rangeley, Kingfield, Carabas Valley are saying, how do we become a 4-season recreation destination? And inside that, of course, is skiing and snowmobiling and the Appalachian Trail and this amazing energy around the mountain bike community. And LMF has sort of stabilized the land base, with these other public sources and private sources around which communities are saying, hey, nobody else is going to do this for us. We have, talented people and unexpecting leaders emerging to create their local economies. And that's what LMF is about. And that's why we fought so hard last year is to get beyond just the dollars and acres and the real benefits that this program delivers. So just to echo the point, behind us are entire organizations that wake up every day to go to bat for the state and communities. And behind those organizations are the groups that we're impacting. So I just wanted to make sure that this opportunity today to tell you that's how we look at it, is beyond the dollars and acres and really what it's doing to our local people.
Question, the pipeline, is the pipeline now going to be filled and taken care of with this passes as we would anticipate? Are there other things coming through the pipeline? And what is the impact of this recent burglary? What's the impact on the desire of other communities to have these kind of projects in the future?
I think, let me start. I think there are to simplify, three categories of projects. Maybe this is a overgeneralization, but there are projects where landowners were willing to wait. They understood, these are in relationships, contracts with land trust, and they were sort of wait and see if the land for Maine future monies would be resolved and released. And we're now able to proceed back on track to close those projects. That's group one. Group two, there were landowners who, for their own personal business reasons, couldn't wait. And land trusts were able to work with with a variety of parties to acquire those properties and sort of solve them on a temporary basis at risk, at huge financial risk in many cases. And work very hard to anticipate the possibility that Land for Maine's future monies would be available again and potentially come back in and repay that debt risk that they took. So there are individual stories around those, but that did happen on a number of occasions. And the third group, and the one I don't really have a lot of specifics about, are the projects that couldn't solve it and couldn't wait. That's kind of sort of shaking off the dust of last year and trying to resolve some of these. That's the best answer I have.
Thanks, Wolf. Senator Green, you have a question?
Thank you, Beth. I'm State Senator Kathy Green, and one of the House members, folks here right now. I had a lot of work at municipal level with LMF, but this was a new arena, as a professional legislator. So I really want to say on behalf of my caucus and others in the Senate, and I'm sure in the House, that I want to express my thanks and our thanks to you folks, because this has the potential to go a lot of different ways. So I think the way that you put the coalition together, the way that you used each of us, I don't want to say use, but the way we work together. And you were connecting us regularly with projects. I have 4 LMF projects in my Senate district. So each one of them is really different. But you were able to connect me with the local leadership and plug me in where I was most useful. So I want to say thank you to all of you. We wouldn't have been here, we wouldn't be here today without the folks, the support that you gave us. Secondly, as Wolf mentioned, in my 4 projects, 1 is still twisting in the wind. The other 3 have closed, which is good news, because the LF money hasn't come through yet. In 2 of those cases, private money came through. In one of those cases, local tax dollars, property tax dollars came through. So what I was concerned about, and I remain concerned about, is in those 3 cases, all of those folks, as Wolf mentioned, put money on the line in the hope and assumption and fingers crossed that the LMF grants they were originally promised will in fact come through, and those payments will be repaid. So with talking with Jeff and Wolf, I in the last couple months have kind of created a paper trail for the projects that have closed. Wrote to LMF and said, this has been hard for all of us, and the good news is this project is closed, but we're still expecting to be repaid when the bonds get issued. And this is as a senator representing this area, this is my formal request that happen. So I put that out there because there are probably other legislators in the room where projects have closed, and I think it's important that we all sort of keep a paper trail going of what our expectations are, so that at some point the governor or someone else can't say, well, if you already closed, you obviously never needed that money to begin with, because that's not the case. So I wondered if you guys have been in contact with other legislators in my position, if you have a plan for that kind of thing going forward, or this letter at this point is where we should kind of be. Thanks.
Well, I haven't spoken to other legislators in that regard, but so our understanding is that these bonds will be sold in January, in June. There's some talk of releasing some money earlier, but for argument's sake, let's just say June. At that point, LMS staff and the board will work together and structure how that money gets released to those 30 some odd projects that were awarded initial grants, but then haven't received those because of the situation. And so the timing for that and how they roll out will depend a lot on how much funding they have and then the readiness of those projects. Certainly those ones that have closed with other resources, that would happen right off the bat. The other issue we have is around financial orders, and so financial orders for projects are signed by the governor, and so although the money will be released, we believe, we still have an issue with financial orders and how those will get signed, whether they will get signed, and that whole process. And so, at this point, we don't really know that detail, so we'll have to kind of wait and see. But our general sense is that those projects that receive initial awards will get those out as this money rolls out.
Well, if it comes up during, between now and June, just make sure you keep folks like in my position apprised so that we can keep on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Beth, I noticed that David Trahan is
Yes,
here.
yes, I definitely was waiting for that question. I wanted to recognize David Trahan, who's worked very hard on this issue for many years. He is the executive director of the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine. Thank you, David. And I also want to recognize Kathy Johnson, who's worked on this program, I think, longer than any of us in the room. So, David, we have other people, Eliza, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Not in particular, maybe just to point out that one of the roles that NRCM has played has been following the timber harvesting issue on Maine's public forests. And I wanted to apprise those in the room for the fact that a really successful commission met over the course of the break to talk about issues related to Maine's public forests or Maine's public reserve lands. And it was a really diverse group representing a lot of excellent interests. Tom was on that commission. I think I saw Senator Dill back there. David Trahan was on that commission as well. And they found that among many of their findings was that it would be unlawful, or at least be met with incredible skepticism, if money was taken from Maine's public reserve land management account and diverted to other purposes. So stay tuned. That report will be going to the ACF committee probably in the next month. And like I said, we're really excited about this excellent outcome from that commission.
Great, thank you. So Jeff and Caitlin, anything to add at this point?
I'll just add, thanks to Wolf for mentioning the Project Town Ironworks. We, AMC, can attest to the community benefits that we've been able to bring to bear because of the support of a lot of other groups. We own 70,000 acres in the Greenville area, and part of that was funded by LMF. I also want to just add that there are these pending projects that have been getting a lot of press, but LMF has funded projects in all 16 counties. And when you start looking for these projects, you find them where you have been a million times and never realized that it was funded by LMF. I know last year I was skiing in Madawaska and saw the LMF sign and thought, wow, that's so cool that this community ski center had some LMF funding, and I had no idea that that was part of it. So there's the big projects that everybody kind of hears about, the tumble downs, the Gulf Vegas, the big pieces that you hear about. But I would encourage you all to look on the LMF website and see the smaller, really small community-focused projects in your district and get to know those projects. And we can help you find those too.
Thank you, Caitlin. David, you want to talk about?
Yeah, just a second. First of all, I'd like to thank all the legislators who helped, particularly Roger and Representative Black, Representative Hilliard, Patrick Corey. Just some amazing leadership within the legislature, Senator Johnson. It was just, in your political career, for those that don't know it, I served for 12 years in the legislature. Occasionally an issue comes up where people on all sides of the political spectrum can come together on something. And this was one of those times where everyone just came together, and I think that's a reflection of the public support that LMF has. Universally, across political spectrum, the public supports LMF. And so just recognize that you were all part of something that was very unique, when we could all come together and fight for something important. Conservation in Maine it goes right to our core, and for all of you, thank you. That's just all I really want to say.
I just want to mention one other piece of legislation. First of all, just hats off to everybody in this room. The governor said he's going to go ahead with this now. I don't think that was any epiphany on his part. It was due to a lot of hard work by everybody here, particularly in those districts where people have voted against it the first time, and we're seeing that. So that's why it happened. But before that happened, Dave Trahan and Tom treasurer really worked together on a bill to kind of repackage the original bill, to have the governor taken out of the process, if you will, not knowing that he was going to say what he said. Hopefully, he's going to follow through with what he's promised. But just in case, we do have that bill, which is being circulated for signature, we've got all the signatures now, but we're going to probably just sit on that, maybe table it pending reference or something like that, just in case things should go badly in the session. So for those legislators in particular, you see it come up in the calendar, it's only because it was already in the works, and we wanted to kind of keep it out in our pocket, just in case.
That's the bill that you sponsor.
Right. Sponsor that, but it'll be kind of off to the side and hopefully it happens to be a little bit. Again, proud to be a member of a group of incredible people on this project. Many people in this room.
Thank you, sir.
You want to tell us about the hill back there?
I have to say, of course, the closest project is to look out the window and see this beautiful vista. It will not become a residential development, it will not become a shopping center. It will be forever protecting the incredible beauty of this capital. I would love
Pressure.
Yes.
Very nice.
You can see it very nicely from the third floor.
Does anyone else have anything they want to know about particular projects?
One of the sources of money over the years is the federal program, project of that, but it's pretty rare.
I know a little bit about that. And sort of the umbrella fund is called, what I missed, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It was established in 1965 and funded through oil and gas revenues. You're right. So it's not a general fund, tax-based project or program. That 50-year birthday just happened last fall. And there was a big effort over the last 6 or 7 years to get ready to refund it. We had partial success, and so the program called Land and Water Conservation Fund actually saw some really robust funding this year. And we can see a window of about 3 years before we're kind of back at it, right? And Maine does attract a good portion of that funding. One fund is called the Forest Legacy Program, and that is something that Maine competes very successfully for in the working forest context. And Land for Maine's Future program is a very elegant match for that. They really work well together, and there's a nice pipeline of projects today and that we can see going forward that will see that relationship of Forest Legacy and Land for Maine's Future. Land and Water Conservation Fund also supports our national parks and our fish and wildlife refuges. So you see that in York County and Washington County and Oxford County. So it's a very important federal matching program for land conservation in Maine and the benefits that come out of it.
And again, it supports really, really small community, tennis courts and public pools and these really, really focused small community projects that you might not even know. We went and met with Congressman Poliquin and told him about, a tennis court in, I think he was in Harem or some, really, really small community, and we went down with the delegate, or we went down with somebody from Maine who was talking about how she grew up. We learned how to play tennis there. Her kids learned how to play tennis there. It's just this really cool, very small scale community piece of the LWCF fund. So it's a really similar good match to LMF.
We're also seeing when you buy a fish and hunting licenses, sort of a national scale, a portion of the taxes that go with that go into a fund for land conservation. And there was project that closed around the holidays, Central Maine Sportsman's Access. We work closely with Sportsman's Alliance on that. It's a Land for Maine's Future and what's called the Pittman Robinson Fund. So that's where our hunters and fishermen are paying into this pot, and we're getting it back here. And it's opened up several thousand acres of land in central Maine that has sort of the least amount of publicly accessible land. And the purpose was fishing and hunting, getting kids out there. And so you can see how that marriage of these federal funds and LMF is so important to create these experiences that we set out to do.
Is that it? Well, I tell you what, if any of you want to have private conversations, we still, we said to be in the room until 12:30, so we didn't have private conversations. But if you want to talk to anyone individually, we'll